Welcome back to the DMZ America podcast for May 11th. This second section of the three-part podcast, we will be talking about the Biden crime syndicate. I think it's not too much of an exaggeration to call it the family business. It looks like politics, but it's like, are they politicians who do crimes, or are they criminals who dabble in politics? I'm not really sure. We'll be talking a little bit later in the third segment. We'll do some inside baseball for people who are interested in journalism. The Pulitzer Prizes were announced by Columbia Universities yesterday. Scott and I, as usual, have thoughts and also some behind the scenes dish about how journalism's most prestigious prize is come up with. Suffice it to say, it makes a sausage factory look pretty.
Yeah, no kidding.
So, Scott, this Joe Biden, I mean, this is still a story that is mostly, but not exclusively, on right-wing media. I would not say completely anymore, but it's still pretty crazy. So there's a lot of stuff to unpack, and so we can't do it all. But basically, the chairman of the House Oversight Committee, James Comer, basically says that he has a new whistleblower that has turned him on to $1 million received by Hunter Biden from a company controlled by a corrupt official in Romania, where Hunter was working over there, peddling his father's influence between 2015 and 2017, when his father was still vice president. Also, apparently, about $1.3 million were paid by an associate of Hunter Biden, who was himself wired $3 million from a Chinese energy company. There's also an Uzbek connection. There's an Uzbek telecom company called MTS, which even in Uzbekistan managed to get busted for bribery, which, trust me, is saying a lot. This Russian national billionaire named, I'm going to butcher his name, Vladimir Yevtushenkov, I think. He also was charged with bribery over there. Anyway, long story short, he met with Hunter at the Ritz-Carlton in 2012. Allegedly, he said he wanted to befriend Hunter so that, quote, maybe he can do a favor for us and we can do a favor for him. So anyway, there was about $1 billion in bribes paid to Uzbek officials between 2004 and 2012. MTS used to trade on the New York Stock Exchange, but it was ultimately suspended in July 2022. Anyway, it turns out that there's 13 million bucks that are sitting in S corporation accounts, at least 10 of them. There might be as many as 17 intertwined accounts, all controlled by Joe or Jill Biden directly, the president and the first lady.
Wow.
Now, nobody knows where that money came from. He's never declared the source, apparently. But given the timing of all this, it looks like, oh shit, this I have to take. Hold on, I'm putting you on. I'm going to pause this. Okay, so sorry for that little interruption there in podcasting land. So basically, what we have here appears to be an influence peddling scheme of epic proportions, where basically the former vice president's son is running around third world shithole countries, basically saying, if you pay me money, hire me to do a job, I'm looking at you, Ukraine, Burisma, I will
Uzbekistan
hook you up with the former vice president, who is still very influential in American politics and may be again, and in fact was again, obviously. And so then some of that money made its way into, apparently, possibly, the coffers of the president and the first lady. If so, I mean, that's certainly what it looks like. It's what it smells like.
Yeah.
If I had to put money on what happened, I'm going to say, I think that's what happened. Of course, we could be wrong. That could just not be true, but it definitely does look like that. I guess, I mean, even CNN is starting to report on it now and then. The House Oversight Committee has asked the FBI to turn over the information that they have from the whistleblower. The FBI has said no on the ground, even though these are unclassified materials. And not to mention, Congress certainly has the ability to look at classified material anyway. What is, I mean, can the media, how long, I'm going to say, I know the media will continue to protect Joe Biden, but the question is, how long will they be able to before the dam bursts and it's no longer possible?
Well, until the credible reporting of this story reaches critical mass. I mean, it reminds me possibly of the beginning utterances of Watergate, which, started before the election of 72 because these guys were caught early on.
Yeah.
And there were some media outlets, not just the Washington Post, that actually covered it and said, wait a minute, something weird is going on here. As more and more effort was put into investigating what was going on, it turns out that, a lot was going on. This has a lot of smoke, Ted. This has a whole lot of smoke, which means you got to look for fire. You mentioned it. We've mentioned it together many times and this started with the Hunter Biden laptop, which we were laughed out. I was laughed out of the room several times by my Democratic friends saying, that's a bullshit story. That's nothing there. That's just a bunch of kooky QAnon people clinging to some myth. It turned out to be very true. And they still won't admit this whole idea that we each have our own narrative and the facts be damned is baffling to me to the extreme. That's probably another podcast, but in this instance, it remains in force that the Democratic supporters and their media minions, and there are many, believe it or not. I don't know how Joe Biden gets that kind of alliance, but I guess because his last name's not Trump. We are in a place now where potentially the president of the United States was maybe the most corrupt president we've ever had. If this story goes to where it looks like it could, Ted, I mean, this will make Warren Harding look like a goddamn Boy Scout.
Absolutely. You're referring to, of course, Teapot Dome.
Yeah, where they sold leases for petroleum, and there's many people at the secretary level went to prison. This could be the worst scandal in the history of the presidency, and
by far.
By far.
And now, I mean, if some intrepid non-conservative reporter were to get busy and try and go after it, let's say, I mean, I could imagine a Matt Taibbi, for example, digging into this, and I guess the thing is there, I mean, the House certainly could and probably would impeach Biden. Could enough Democratic senators be peeled away to possibly remove the president from office?
It depends on the evidence. I mean, that's what the final straw for Nixon was. Barry Goldwater and some other conservative Republicans came to the White House and said, we can't support you. We're not going to vote. We cannot, we're not going to vote to acquit. And Nixon knew at that point that if the trial got to the Senate, he'd lose. So rather than go through all that, he resigned. I can't tell you how much this stinks, Ted. If this comes to fruition the way that I have talked about this for the last year, if that comes to fruition and those are the facts, I cannot imagine anybody supporting this guy. But I'm looking at, look at our first segment. Donald Trump, he stole money and had to pay money back to charities. He has,
he ripped off college students.
He is found by a jury of his peers to be guilty of sexual abuse and
libel, not guilty.
Libel. And his supporters still love this guy. Does that, you tell me, Ted, you have a lot. I mean, you're in New York. You tell me, would your New York liberal buddies, if this story goes the way I think it's going to go, where do they continue to just obfuscate and play interference and
Yeah,
run
I
out the
think
clock?
yeah, I do. I think that the world we live in now is that people just don't care. If you support Donald Trump, you really do support him, even if he shoots someone randomly on Fifth Avenue. If you support Joe Biden, you don't care that if he took $13 million from an Uzbek telecom in order to change U.S. foreign policy towards issuing that company with lucrative U.S. government contracts in Central Asia. You don't care because Biden is not Trump and Trump is not Biden. That is all you care about, is your hate. You don't like your side, but you really hate the other side. So you vote for your side. That's where we're at. I do think that's where we're at. It's really insanely depressing. And people could say, well, you don't have a choice. It's a binary system, but you do have a choice. You can vote for a third party. You can boycott the election. These are choices, and you can say those are not choices. No, they are choices, and people are choosing not to exercise those choices. That you can choose not to exercise a choice, but that does not make it not a choice. And that's a choice that I have availed myself of in many elections. The last time I voted for a mainstream presidential candidate was
Yeah. When
Obama
was that?
in
Oh, really?
2008. I did vote for Obama. I
How
thought it
come?
was I thought it was important. First of all, I thought he was going to close Guantanamo. He had promised that. He also promised a public option in healthcare, and I thought that was super important. And I also thought it was important for there to be a black president, 230 years into the republic. But I regret that vote. I shouldn't have voted for him at all. But for the most part, I voted for people like Jill Stein and Howie Hawkins and Ralph Nader. And I don't regret any of those votes at all. And I know you voted for people like Ed Clark and other libertarian candidates. And
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't think.
I'm trying to think of a national, for the presidency, the last time I voted for either a Republican or a Democrat.
Mm,
I know I voted for Reagan in '84.
mm-hmm.
Um, yes, and I voted for H.W. Bush in '88. I think that may have been the last one.
Okay. Yeah. I don't think I may have voted for Mondale in 84. Dukakis, I think I was working that year was the last year I ever worked for a campaign. I worked for Dukakis for a hot second, and that experience turned me off. And so I may not have, I mean, I dropped out.
Okay, hold on. You
I
can't just
never,
drop that. What happened? You got to tell the tale.
well, okay. So
Bullet point it. If it's long, bullet point. You can
it's
do
a long
this.
story. Well, okay, but basically, the operation was run out of Boston because he was, of course, the governor of Massachusetts, and the Bostonians were a bunch of assholes, and they didn't know what the fuck they were doing. I was running the youth campaign in Ohio for Dukakis, and at that time, Bush was cleaning Dukakis's clock, and he ought not to have been. He just wasn't the kind of, George H.W. Bush was this preppy from Connecticut, and that should not have played well in the land of steel factories and rust. And part of it was that they had these great attack ads. Long story short, we wanted to run some attack ads. Dukakis put the word out that he was not going to engage Bush in any kind of attacks, no matter how fair, because he didn't want to lower himself to Bush's level. And you might remember that's the year of Lee Atwater's infamous Willie, what was his name? Willie Horton ads. Yeah. And it was just like, they were in the gutter, beating us up. And Dukakis wanted to play by Queensberry rules. And I was like, fuck this fucking party. I mean, like either we fight or we don't fight. I'm out. It's like, if you don't want to win, I certainly don't want to be there, not winning with you. So, or not trying to win. So, I mean, that's the bullet point version. But, so I guess, yeah, I mean, what seems likely to me in both sides here, Trump and Biden are both trying to run out the clock on their legal problems, right? I mean, Biden's legal problems are derived from the laptop from hell. Republicans in Congress are going deep. They're going to find more and more stuff is at the FBI.
Yeah.
Deep state's going to be on it. But the thing is, we have an election coming up. The people are paying attention. First GOP debate is in August. Whether Trump participates or not is unknown. I think he will participate. I think he'd be dumb not to. But so Biden might be thinking, all I have to do is keep this, play for time, keep this going as long as possible. Then we'll run into the DOJ policy of not trying to interfere with an election, and that'll just go away. Trump's thinking a lot of the same things. He's like, I can pardon myself and my own people for a lot of this stuff. Maybe not the Manhattan DA thing, but this is New York courts. I mean, he's going to die of old age before he ever gets in front of after all the pre-trial, all the motions to dismiss a continuance, blah, blah, blah application bullshit that will keep this going on forever. So yeah, it's interesting because both of these guys, I mean, I gotta say, I didn't think I'd ever say this, but at this stage, if half of this stuff about Biden is true, he's worse than Trump. It's just as a corrupt person.
I believe this to be true. I mean, I really do believe the stories coming from the laptop. I mean, I'm sorry, Ted, just the stuff from the laptop coming out that there was a kickback. The big guy got a percentage of these deals.
Yeah.
What was it? 10, 20%? It was not nothing.
Yeah.
All that tells you that this was pay to play and there was a kickback involved. And I believe that if there is a smoking gun, it's the laptop. They're going to find more. And if Biden is elected,
I mean, it's also the other. You were talking about this before we pushed record on this podcast, Scott. You said the other smoking gun is that fabulous beach mansion. Like,
yeah,
how does a guy who makes 200 grand, right?
Yeah.
How does he afford that? I mean, there's tales. There's even a Gary Trudeau written TV show based on a true story about congressmen. I know he's not in Congress, but senators too, who have a really hard time making it, living both in Washington and in their home districts, and they have to like sleep in their own offices, or they have to get roommates or whatever.
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
$250,000 is not that much money, right? Not when you have to maintain two homes, you have a family, and certainly, look, it's enough to certainly have a nice living, but that doesn't explain that kind of house.
No, it's a mansion on the beach,
right? I think they said it's like a $13 million mansion. Interesting sum of money.
Indeed. So obviously, we're just giving this as a heads up to our listeners that, I was actually talking to Ted about his legacy and so on the other night. And this is as true
or
now
lack thereof.
No, I think you will, but it's going to be one of those after you're dead, they go, oh shit, he was pretty smart.
Even while we were calling him an idiot the entire time.
Oh yeah. But the thing is, you have a reputation, you have a track record of being like a mile and a half ahead of everybody else. And that's what's happening. I feel it in this story too, that, we're talking about this stuff 2 years before anyone else is going to be talking about it.
Well, and Scott, here's one of the reasons I'm thank you for that. That's very kind. I mean, one of the things I want to also get your thoughts on is like, if let's look at the counterfactual, right? So let's just say this is all innocent. Okay. There's nothing going on. The shell companies, the S corporations, all of that stuff doesn't mean anything. It's just like Joe Biden is pure as the driven snow. Well, okay. So then what's the other explanation? like what is what could the legitimate explanation possibly be?
Not legitimate, but what's going to be sold to or peddled to the American people as this gets closer and closer and stinks more and more, Ted. They're going to throw Hunter under the bus. They've been nice to him. Oh, he had an issue. He had a problem. He has a disease. You know, he can't, he likes the crack. He loves the meth. That poor guy. And so but you live in New York. I lived in Chicago for many years. Meth addicts tend not to make multi-million-dollar deals.
No, that's true.
In fact, if you hand them a $5, they're thrilled to death.
Well, he claims he can't afford child support right now for that case with the stripper baby that he has that he's pretending that he doesn't know, the one who's the DNA disagrees with in Arkansas.
I don't know the details of that. She's an Arkansas stripper?
Yeah. So, stay classy, Little Rock.
Yeah. That's
I don't know if she ever made it to Little Rock. I think she's in she's not in the big city yet.
One of my favorite road trips, I think I was driving here from Arizona to come to Birmingham to take the job way back when. And I went through Arkansas. And so I stopped in Hope. Have you ever been to Hope, Arkansas?
No, but I know that is the hometown of a certain former president of ours.
Yeah. Bill Clinton, how he closed.
A man from Hope.
Yes. I still believe in a place called Hope. And it's a lovely, charming, sleepy little, beautiful Southern town. It's gorgeous. That's not where by the way, that's not where he grew up. It's really important to know. He grew up in Hot Springs, which is all about illegal gambling and liquor and women. And that's where he grew up. Right. That's the place he believes in. Anyway, I digress. So, okay, folks, just giving you the heads up. You heard it here first that this is going to be a major scandal.
So they won't be able to. Yeah, it's not like Biden can say like, oh, remember that book that like I sold so many copies of? Like exactly like Obama could say that.
Well, he does. That's where.
And Biden also hasn't given a whole shit ton of speeches, and he doesn't have. He's like he can't launder this money. That's part of the problem. He can't attribute it to anything legitimate. It's kind of analogous to George Santos, 13 counts, right, in a federal indictment. One of which is that he falsely claimed to have gotten $750,000 that he never got, which is hilarious because usually you falsely claim that you didn't get money.
Right. It's weird. What that whole Santos case. I mean, you talk about a psycho. I mean, the guy's just, oh my God, pathological. It's real. Could he win re-election?
Well, that's a good question. I think no. Look, he could, but I don't think he will, because for the simple reason that all the New York area Republican politicos, including the asshole King, who used to have that.
Oh, seat, yeah.
They all hate him and are calling him a loser, and they want him gone. He's only surviving because the margin in the House is so tight that they want the vote and they can't be sure. It's a swing district. Democrats could totally take that district back. But I imagine that the establishment will primary him, or they'll give him an offer he can't refuse to step down.
Like all the sweater vests you can wear. Something like that. I don't know. Yeah.
Or all the drag outfits, free tickets to Carnival.
Whatever. I don't know what. He's a very strange man.
He is a strange man. He's not like Donald Trump's a strange man who has a roguish charm. That's not true about George Santos.
No, I'm not sure how he won election because he just seems very unlikable.
He's very local. I mean, they really knew him in the district, and he really did a lot of retail politics.
Oh, well, okay.
And it's also a strange district because it's parts of Queens, which is in New York City, and then a big chunk of Nassau County, Long Island. So it straddles the New York City border, which normally those borders are not like the Mexico-US border. Those are strong borders. Things do not cross. So even traffic can't get past it. Anyway, we'll take a little pause here, Scott. We'll come back and talk about the Putzlers